Trust I seek and I find in you. Every day for a something new. Open mind for a different view. And nothing else matters. Parshat Beshalach is chock-a-block full of miracles. And yet, behind all of this amazing set of miracles, what we really have is an exploration through the birth of a nation, the birth of the wandering Jew of this time. We have challenges of identity. We have challenges of trust. And we have, through that birth of a nation, a lot to explore that can help us understand what it takes to shift from an old to a new identity. The parsha starts off with Beshalach Paro, when Paro sends them out. And immediately we have this recognition of the challenge before us. Hashem recognizes that he's not going to be able to take Bnei Yisrael the short way directly into Eretz Yisrael, and rather they're going to have to go the long way. When Hashem does this, he's really bringing a clear example of tzimtzum, this idea that Hashem gives free will. He takes a step back, he moves himself out of the control of the world, and he allows room for the people in the world to take action, to, in a way, fill that void, to foster their relationship with him. Kabbalistically, tzimtzum is the way that Hashem takes a step back to create that vacuum, and bittul is the action that the human is supposed to take in order to be able to fill that void, to understand that they are nothing, they are no thing, and that they can put their entire trust in Hashem. So first things first, Moshe goes to get the bones of Yosef. And there's a number of different ways you can think about this. Perhaps it was because Yosef, many generations, hundreds of years before, he said, promise me you're going to take out my atzamos, my bones. But perhaps there's another way of understanding this. Moshe goes to pick up an identity that can serve the Bnei Israel well. The skeletons in the closet. He dusts this one off and he says, look, first things first, there was a version of us that used to be leaders. We don't have to be slaves. Second thing, Yosef is a character who, throughout his entire life, he has the utmost trust. Every step of the way he says, well, this was bad for me, God made it okay. This was bad for me, you thought it was bad for me, God made it okay. In the end, everything works out. And in a way, perhaps what Moshe is trying to do by bringing this specific action now is to try and reinforce for the Bnei Israel that there is an identity that they can attach themselves to that will result in success. So they go out and they find themselves with the first test. Paro is chasing them. They find themselves at the banks of the Reed Sea on the verge of either death by chariot or death by drowning. And immediately we see their first form of regression, this not readiness. And they use one of the most classic defense mechanisms of all time, sarcasm. Oh, there weren't enough graves in Egypt that you had to bring us out here to die. So what do? They cry. The end result of this sarcastic comment is crying. And God listens, and he responds immediately at that point with something very important. He says, you have freedom now. Before, where you were kotzer ruach, last week's parsha, you weren't able to use your voice at all. Start by using your voice. But now you have freedom. You are out here. You put your trust in me already to take your steps out of here. Move. Don't cry. Why are you crying? Start moving. And I think one of the hardest things to do sometimes is to be able to step into action, especially when we're frozen. But this is God really reinforcing for us that this is the moment of bittul. I'm taking my step back. Now's the time of bittul. You have to take the one step forward to put your trust in me. At the same time, the Egyptians are also experiencing this same challenge with their identity. Many generations later, King Shlomo is going to procure a number of chariots from the best chariot makers in the world and a number of horses from the best horse breeders in the world. Egypt. What happens here, though? The Egyptians come on their chariots. They find themselves in the Reed Sea, mired in the muck. And what do? They spend time trying to move their chariots out of the muck. They were so reliant on what had served them well in the past that they couldn't break out of that identity. after they cross the sea and they see the Egyptians have now been vanquished by the sea, they sing Shirat Hayam. This is something that you can only do when you're relaxed. Singing is the ultimate recognition of freedom. And Kabbalistically, they say that there's specifically singing only works when the Olam Ha'elyon and Olam Ha'tachton are connected. The worlds are in alignment. The angels, we see that they wanted to sing. Some of them said we shouldn't sing. At the same time, both of them sing. And this song is really the indication of flow. And it's the indication of the integration of these two halves that we talked about, the tzimtzum of Hashem creating space, and the bittul of the Bnei Yisrael recognizing that they had trusted and that this had been the result of that trust. Amazing. This pinnacle, this climax, the Parsha really reaches as high. From here, we have the come down. And it really doesn't take long. 3 days later, immediately, Bnei Yisrael, after having such an amazing miracle with water, are not feeling it anymore. They're feeling the old high, and nothing quite tastes the same. They come to a new place. There's some water, but it's bitter. They keep going. They see a place that has amazing stuff. It doesn't give them the same kind of sustenance. Then they find themselves with no food. Hashem gives them manna. He says, don't worry, trust me. You don't have to take for tomorrow. They try and take for tomorrow. This old identity, this fear that they have, they're not really able to move past it. And all of this is really just a few days after this experience, this most amazing supernatural experience that they've ever had. So getting out of an old identity is not easy. So what happens? Bnei Yisrael later, they find themselves in a place with no water, this place of Refidim. And again, they cry out, and they cry out to Hashem. So Hashem brings them water from this rock, a new supernatural water. Water doesn't come from rocks. And what happens? Immediately after that, the Bnei Yisrael ask the most, you could say it's a chutzpahdik question. Hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu. Imlo. Is Hashem in our midst, is amongst us or not? Now, to take this in a literal sense, it's quite obvious. You've got clouds and you've got pillars of fire. You have all of these amazing miracles that have just happened. Literally just now, water started flowing out of a rock. How can Hashem not be Bikirbeinu? And at the same time, the question maybe is Bikirbeinu inside them. There's a different kind of a question. So it's obvious that they didn't think that Hashem couldn't do miracles anymore. They saw them. But this lack of trust is that they thought that he abandoned them, this moment. And this really, again, becomes another echo of the Tzimtzum. Hashem gave them room in this world to experience and have free will, and yet they left the vacuum. They had doubt. And it's even so much so that the first level, when we talk about really what it is to do proper bittul hayesh, which is the first word of this pasuk, hayesh Hashem b'kirbeinu. This hayesh is literally translates to is there, but the is there is a something. It's a something of an identity. The same identity challenge that they're struggling with when they can't get over it is the same thing that they had to start their challenge with. And what happens at this moment? That's when Amalek strikes. Amalek is personified as the nation, this personification of doubt. So it literally becomes the echo. When you come down here of doubt, this is the challenge that you're going to face, and that's going to be the fight. Even though all these miracles have just happened, Bnei Yisrael manifests in a way, they create the pathway in this tzimtzum, in this vacuum that God creates for them to have full trust. They bring in doubt. So what happens in this war? It's obvious that they haven't internalized Hashem as somebody that they can rely on. We have a famous story here of Moshe's hands. When Moshe's hands go up, then the Bnei Yisrael are winning. When they come down, then they start losing. And that's how the battle goes. And if we take a step back and think about this, the idea that Moshe's hands were doing the battle is perhaps a simplified way of understanding it. Moshe was connecting, he was orchestrating God's energy. Ich weiß, I don't know. But the story goes and it brings in a few other characters. It tells him at the same time, Aaron and Hur were two people who stood beside him, And when his hands went down, they helped him raise his hands back up. And who else was involved in this? Yehoshua. Yehoshua becomes the general. He rallies the people and he goes out and he fights with them. So pause for a second. Who are these people and what are they bringing to the equation that's helping us? Moshe, we know already. Moshe is the connection to God. He brings God down into this world. He is literally, perhaps, the Bikir Benu that they were referring to before. But him alone, there are certain qualities that he potentially has challenges with. So Moshe, sometimes when he's challenged, he steps back from the nation. Sometimes when he's challenged, he says he doesn't represent them in the same way that he used to be able to. So we bring in Aaron and we bring in Hur. Aaron is the person who is personified as the Ish Chesed. He's the one who, from the beginning, when Hashem tells him, go and talk to your brother, he knows that Aaron is the person who is going to bring that midah of Chesed and be able to create connection and balance out Moshe's desire to maybe step back and let them do their thing. Hur, on the other hand, not a character that we know so much about. He is actually Moshe's nephew. He later will find out that he dies at the Egel Azav because he tries to get the nation not to do it. He's personification of the midah of Gvura. And this is, again, a balance that we have from the forefathers. We talked about Chesed and Gvura, but he's Moshe's backbone. When Moshe says, Nimasli Kvar, Hur brings back the Gvura. He says, no, we're not giving up. It's these two people, personification of Chesed and Gvura, that hold up Moshe's hands and bring the connection to God down into this world. Now we have to bring in Yoshua. Yoshua is the person who is introduced in this week's Parsha. He's later going to be the person who leads the Bnei Yisrael into the land of Eretz Yisrael. And this is the first time that he begins to adopt that new role of a leader. The Bnei Yisrael that we're talking about now that just got brought out of Egypt, they're not going to be the ones who are going to be able to move into the land of Eretz Yisrael. This challenge of their previous identity, whether it's slavery or whatever it was that's holding them back, doubt and all of those kinds of things, is not going to allow them to move into Eretz Yisrael. A new leader with a new approach for a new set of people is going to be able to take pass the torch from where it started, and that's really where Yehoshua comes in. So in a way, this week's Parsha brings in ideas that God brings us out, but he has created a tzimtzum in the world. He's created a space for us to be able to connect back with him. He asks for bittul. And what is bittul? It starts with bittul hayesh, the acknowledgement that I am no thing. Perhaps it's a biblical concept. We see it starts here. There's many Buddhist understandings of this as well. It doesn't matter what my story is, who I am. If I have true bittul hayesh, then God will back me up and help me. So acknowledge the bittul and the freedom that comes with it as we go from being a person who's stuck in an old identity to a person free to act in a new one. If that inspires anything, please let me know. As always, thank you for listening.